This video will focus on Chapter 21, which encompasses the Americas and Oceania. So the biggest differences between Oceania, the Americas, and the rest of the world is that, well, first of all, there are no large domesticatable animals. So you really don't have any immunity to animal-based diseases, such as smallpox, which evolved from cowpox. You also have no wheels other than as toys. However, a wheelbarrow would have been very nice. There's no useful metallurgy. All the metals are just for decorative purposes, such as gold and silver in the Americas. So the order of the major Mesoamerican civilizations were the Olmec, Maya, Teotihuacan, and Toltec. I probably totally butchered the pronunciations of those, but oh well. All these four civilizations were a big part of the Aztec heritage, with the evolution of corn farming, writing, human sacrifices, and calendars. It's like, a little like the ruins of Rome were to the Germanic successor states. The Mexica, or Aztecs, were one of several groups of non-pastoral nomads and migrants who occupied Mesoamerica in the mid-13th century CE. They had a tradition of kidnapping women from their tribes and seizing their cultivated lands, so not exactly a very friendly group if you ask me. They settled around 1375 CE in Tenochtitlan, which would later become Mexico City, in the center of Lake Texcoco. They dredged soil from the lake bottom to create fertile plots of land, which is known as chinampas, and you could get up to 7 crops per year. The Mexica developed a tributary empire by the 15th century. It was not very centralized. It was led by, and they really relied more on fear-mongering and scare tactics to maintain order. It was led by Itzcoatl from 1428 to 1440, Montezuma from 1440 to 1469. They joined with Texcoco and Tlacopan to create the Aztec Empire. Their primary language was Nahuatl, which is still spoken by 1.5 million people to this day. So this is a map of the three major civilizations of Mesoamerica. We have the Maya, the Toltec, and then the Aztecs, with their capital in the center of Texcoco. Excuse me. Mexica Society was very hierarchical in nature, with a high stature, with soldiers being revered. These soldiers were mainly drawn from the aristocratic class, but there was some upward mobility. The soldiers were granted land and could receive food tribute. They also had sumptuary privileges. Basically, only they could wear certain clothes. The commoners couldn't wear the cool clothes. There was a merchant class, but it was not very honored. Mexica societies, like almost every other society in the world, was patriarchal. There was with an emphasis on motherhood and homemaking. However, mothers of warriors were especially lauded. In fact, they considered dying in childbirth equivalent to dying in battle. The priests were masters of complex agricultural and ritual calendars, serving ritual functions, reading omens, and advising rulers. They would occasionally become rulers as well. The slave class was composed of debtors, children sold into slavery. However, they were not prisoners of war, because these prisoners of war would be used as victims in human sacrifices. The Mexica religion was influenced by indigenous traditions from the Olmec and Toltec periods, a solar calendar of 365 days and a ritual calendar of 260 days. However, it was not as elaborate as the Mayan calendar. They played a ritual ball game known as Pocotoc, which a depiction of is seen here. Basically, they must use their bodies, but not their hands, to move a rubber ball through this hole. Sometimes it was for fun, other times it was for choosing. Other times it was played to choose sacrificial victims. There was a heavy emphasis on human sacrifice, more so than predecessor cultures or any other society in the world. Sacrificial victims had the tips of fingers torn off before the death in order to serve as ritual wounds. The victims were either criminals or captured enemy soldiers. There were also some personal rituals, such as the piercing of the penis and the earlobes. And this is a depiction of an Aztec human sacrifice, with the heart being ripped out of the victim's chest by the priest in order to appease the gods, and the dead bodies being tossed down the steps of the pyramids. A very gruesome practice. obviously. In North America, you had the Pueblo and Navajo societies in the American Southwest, with maize farming comprising, unsurprisingly, 80% of their diet. By 700 CE, they had constructed permanent stone or adobe dwellings, 125 sites being discovered. You also had the Iroquois peoples, who settled the communities in the woodlands east of the Mississippi, as well as the mound-building peoples, which built ceremonial platforms, homes, and who used their mounds as ceremonial platforms, homes, and burial grounds. Cahokia was one of the largest mounds found near St. Louis, which was occupied from 900 to 1250 CE. And this is a picture of Cahokia. As we can see, it is a very large mound. I believe it is one of the largest pre-Columbian structures in North America, possibly the largest. There's also a Serpent Mound effigy in Ohio. No written documents survive regarding northern cultures. Therefore, most of our knowledge comes from archaeological evidence, which indicates widespread trade, with the exploitation of river routes. There was no writing before the arrival of the Spaniards in the 16th century CE, unlike Mesoamerican cultures, which had a writing from 5th century CE or before. Archaeological evidence reveals reveals stuff about Andean society from the first millennium BCE or earlier, with the development of cities around 1000 to 1500 CE. The Incas settled around Lake Titicaca in the mid-13th century, with their first main ruler being Pachacuti, who reigned from 1438 to 1471, expanding their territory. This empire encompassed modern Peru, parts of Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. It had a population of 11.5 million. They spoke the Quechua language, which is still used to this day. So this is a map of the Inca Empire. As we can see, it stretches down the length of the Andes Mountains, encompassing Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Argentina. The Incas ruled by holding hostages, and as well as colonizing lands. They had no writing, but instead used a system of cords and knots called quipu. It was cumbersome, but it worked. This served as a mnemonic aid, and as a record-keeping system. And this is a depiction of quipu, basically long strings of little knots to record various things. Cusco is the capital of the empire, serving as the administrative, religious, and ceremonial center of their vast, expansive realm. Residents were primarily the high nobility, priests, and of course the hostages. They also had gold facades on buildings. The Incas built massive roads with amazing rope bridges that to this day still can hold people. They had two north-south roads, each approximately 10,000 miles. There's a mountain route and a coastal route. They also had Additionally, they had other paved, shaded, wide roads, as well and a courier and messenger service. However, there was limited long-distance trade, as the government had a monopoly on trade. As a result, there were few merchants. And this is a picture of one of those rope bridges. The social elites were dominated by an infallible king who claimed descent from the sun. They also had a worship of ancestors, with their remains being preserved in mummified form. These mummies were regularly consulted and had sacrifices offered to them. They were also paraded on festive occasions. Aristocrats received special privileges, such as only they could wear earlobe spools as adornment. The priestly class lived ascetic and celibate lives. Land and tools were held communally, and commoners had to fulfill mandatory work details on lands of aristocrats. This was known as the mita tax. They also had to work on public works projects, and this is a picture of the so-called Big Ears tradition. In the Incan religion, Inti was the sun god was a major deity. Peasant sacrifices usually included vegetables and animals, but not often humans. Sin was understood as a disruption of the divine order, with confession and penance and one could get rid of their sins by confessing through confession and penance, by which priests absolved individuals of their sins. So, a little summary of the Americas. Their societies were much smaller than in the Eastern Hemisphere. They had no metal tools, wheels, or core domestic animals. Still, they did develop some complex societies, with uncanny parallels to the rest of the world. Oceania is the third chunk or petri dish of the world, with the other two being the Americas and everyone else. Australia was settled 50,000 years ago and exposed to agriculture from New Guinea after 5,000 BC, but they really stayed hunter-gatherers. They traded across the entire continent, for trading primarily pearly oyster shells, boomerangs, and furs, but focus was really on the local area. And that's as time stood still. And this is an artwork from these Aboriginal Australians. The agricultural package enabled migration to all the major islands in the Pacific. This package included pigs, chickens, yams, taro, and fish. The last island that being settled the last settled island being New Zealand in 1250 CE. Kingdoms and hierarchies developed, such as it was taboo for a commoner to cast a shadow on a king. They also probably brought sweet potato from South America, and there was some long-distance contact between Hawaii and Tahiti, with fish ponds supporting 500,000 Hawaiians. And this is a map of the major migrations. We believe many of them came from Aborigine descended from Aborigine Taiwanese, as well as people from Southeast Asia and Indonesia, migrating to various islands, etc., etc. And this is a structure, a pyramid, I believe, in Tahiti. Their religion comprised mainly of gods of war, gods of agriculture, and it also included temples, just like the one we just saw before. Now, sometimes if these people kind of consume too much resources on their islands, that you can have cases like Easter Island with overpopulation by 1500, as well as environmental stress, which eventually led to cannibalism, kind of like Lord of the Flies. The primary cause of their downfall was cutting down all the trees to create these moai. That is all. Thank you.